I'd love to hear your thoughts on the pause bench press. Do you feel someone like myself should incorporate pause reps into my training, or is that technique more for competitive powerlifters? I'm a 36-year-old guy looking to improve my strength and pack some muscle on in the process. I don't ever plan on competing, but a big personal goal of mine would be to hit 315 on the bench. I've come close, but haven't ever gotten it. Your insight would mean the world to me. Thanks so much for your time, coach. Yada, yada, yada. Greg, yes, if your goal is to increase your bench and pack on some muscle, absolutely, I recommend the pause bench press or pausing your bench press reps. In fact, I can't think of too many examples where it wouldn't be beneficial to pause your bench reps. I've always been an advocate of strict form, slight pause on the chest. I can't think of many reasons not to. Actually, the only one, as someone who has worked with a lot of NFL combine athletes, the only example where, I would not recommend pausing and it would be detrimental is if you're doing the 225 bench test, where the only goal is to bang out as many reps as possible. You just have to, the bar has to touch your chest and then come to a lockout, and you got to get as many reps in as possible. So in that case, a slight bounce and just going faster is beneficial, because that's not anything that's building strength. That's just a display of your strength / I should say muscular endurance. But for that specific test where you're kind of racing against the clock, I've talked about you only have about 40 to 45 seconds before your tries, your chest is going to shut down. So in that case, we're banging them out. But in every other case, you want strict, controlled, and I would even say pause reps on your bench press. So back to your goal. Strength and hypertrophy is the goal. When that is the goal, definitely suggest pausing your bench reps. Listen, pause benches get you brutally strong. And I think a lot of people know that, but they just don't like performing the exercise because it's harder and you're going to have to go a little bit lighter in the beginning. But most people do know that if you've ever performed pause benches, they'll get you strong. But what I feel like it doesn't get the credit it deserves for is pause benches are also great for building your pecs, because you're not using momentum to get the weight off your chest when you perform pause benches. You're actually using your pecs to get the weight off your chest, and your lats to a degree, if you kind of know how to flare your lats and that little bit more of a powerlifting technique. But the pecs are primarily responsible for initially moving the bar off your chest. That's why it always amazes me. A lot of guys have come to me over the years and said things like, the barbell bench press isn't a good exercise for chest development. They'll say, they've been barbell benching since the day they started lifting, and they've performed the exercise for 5-10 years, whatever it may be. And they'll say, I still have no pecs. So it must not be a good exercise for packing muscle on your chest. And then I'll watch these same guys bench, and I think to myself, it's not the exercise. It's not the exercise's fault that you have no pecs. It's your shitty technique. It's the fact that you're bouncing the barbell off your chest like a friggin' trampoline. You're using momentum exclusively during the first 4 to 6 inches of the movement. Of course, you're not going to build a chest. Those first 4 to 6 inches, that's some valuable real estate for building muscle and strength, as far as I'm concerned. Yet so many people miss out on this opportunity to build strength and build muscle because of their freaking ego, because you can't lift as much initially when you pause the weight on your chest. And this is something I know I've spoken about at length, but I think it's important. One of the biggest problems with quote unquote gym bros is they all want to walk in the gym and test or display their strength each and every workout. They don't take the time to build strength. They throw way too much weight on the bar. They slam it off their chest. They don't care if they crack their sternum in half. They just want to be able to tell their friends or post on Instagram that they benched 315 today or crushed 405 on the bench today. Meanwhile, they'd all be better off if they lightened the load and took the time to build their strength and build some muscle. And I mention that because the pause bench press is one of the best ways to do that. So kind of let me give you some specifics. So I mentioned how pausing your bench reps will help you pack some muscle on your pecs, because those are the pecs are the prime movers responsible for initially lifting the bar off your chest. But the other thing I love about the pause bench is, if done properly, the pause bench requires way more just full body tension compared to the average touch and go bench press. Even if it's a strict touch and go, the pause bench requires a lot more tension in the body. And the more tension you can create during a lift, the stronger you will get. More tension equals more strength, period. And speaking of creating more tension, let me finish with this. I want to share with you guys how I personally perform my pause benches. And members of the DeFranco Insider, you're going to know where I'm going with this, because I designed an entire bench press specialization routine around this very technique. And the pause bench technique I'm referring to is what I call quote unquote hover benches. And it got its name because of the technique. And the best coaching cue / visual I could give you guys to describe this hover bench press technique is to think about lowering the barbell under control and having it touch your t-shirt, not your chest. All right, so visualize that for a second. Instead of performing your pause bench by allowing the barbell to kind of, come down real quick and sink into your chest, and then a lot of times guys will kind of heave the weight off their chest after the pause. They'll let it sink. They'll let the barbell sink a little more into their chest and then press it, which is almost a way of bouncing a pause bench, if you will. Instead, I like that cue of lower the barbell under control and pause it on your t-shirt, not your chest. Pause for 1 to 3 seconds, hold in that position, and then from there, boom, press the weight up to lockout. You want to get strong AF? That's how you perform your pause benches, and I promise you'll get bigger and stronger. Why does this slight little technical variation of the pause bench work so well? Simple. It requires more control and more, here we go, full body tension. And what did I just say a few seconds ago about tension? More tension equals more strength. In fact, I could give you a personal story. These hover bench presses is exactly how I personally benched double my body weight for the first time in my life on my 42nd birthday, no less. I did 425 at a body weight of 212 pounds. And I will say that, and there's video online of that birthday double body weight bench press. That bench, I didn't pause it. It was I would call it a strict touch and go, because it was just a personal goal of mine. It wasn't for a bench press competition. But it shows you when I trained for that bench, all of my training was performed with this hover bench press technique, performing pause bench presses. And then when I tested myself, I just did more of a strict little touch and go, just more of a gym lift. But it shows you the pause bench will dramatically improve your touch and go bench. But it definitely does not work the other way around. If you always train touch and go or with a pause, that will not carry. If you always train touch and go without a pause, if you're always bouncing the weight off your chest, that will not transfer over to your pause bench. And I always say, if you want to get strong, focus on the techniques and the exercises that have the highest carryover to the most other things. And pause benching will carry over to all other forms of benching and pretty much pressing, whereas touch and go or bounce reps don't carry over to anything. So think about that. And last note, just a final note on this technique. I talk about pause the bar on your t-shirt and not on your chest. You don't have to take that, super literally. That's just a visual slash, analogy. I don't know if you'd call it an analogy. That's more of a visual that I use to prevent you from losing tension in the bottom of the lift. That's what that verbiage is all about. It's so you don't lose tension in the bottom of the lift. It's just such an overlooked aspect of training in general. So if you do this and you focus on this type of benching for a while, trust me, watch what happens. And cheap plug, if you want a 6-week repeatable bench press specialization routine, revolving around this hover bench press technique with specific sets, reps, and percentages, etc., you could get that at DeFrancoInsider.com, along with over 700 other exclusive videos, private Q&As, exclusive programs, the best $20 a month you will ever spend. So just throwing that out there, DeFrancoInsider.com, if you want the full bench press specialization program. But otherwise, just incorporate this hover bench. Replace whatever program you're on right now. Just replace your sloppy touch and go bouncing bench presses with this hover bench press technique. Make sure you lighten the load initially and watch what happens. Let's move on.